Hey, in this lesson we're going to use various landscape tools in Unreal Engine to create a nice landscape scene. Let's go. Hey, welcome to Real-Time Workflows. I'm MX Bell. I worked on Deadpool and Wolverine, Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, 1917, Hobbs and Shaw, Wheel of Time, Little Mermaid, No Time to Die, tons more. What you're going to get in the channel are my pro tips and how I use Unreal Engine to make films. So let's get started. Let's make some stuff. See you down the road. Welcome back to Real-Time Workflows. Let's do some landscaping. Now, look. I'm a filmmaker, I'm not a landscape artist, so this is the kind of an introduction to this concept. If you want to pursue it deeper, you can go deeper. I'm just kind of showing you the way with a few tools that I use generally, and also some asset packs that I use quite a lot. So the first one is Brushify Natural Roads. I heartily recommend this. It's really fucking good. I've used it on nearly everything. I used it on Prassenberg Ridge. Probably the best, one of the best things other than an ultra dynamic sky. This is probably the asset pack that I've used the most and I've got the most out of, so heartily recommend that one. There's also usually some free trees and things like that. The old Megascans ones, European, Hornbeam, Black Alder, they're all, you can go and get them. We're going to use those as well. So the first thing we're going to do is go to landscape mode here, and this will ask us if we want to create a landscape. We can kind of see what it would look like. But what I like to do first is get our character, and we'll put him at the origin as always. Put him at the origin, and now we've got some sense of scale. Okay, we can see what's going on. So now if we go back to landscape, we can see this is actually quite a big landscape. I don't really want that bit to be that big for this. This is a small little environment, so I'm going to change that to 7x7 quads instead of 63x63, which is what the default is. I mean, we can also bring it down. You can do it super small like that. Let's not go quite that mad. So we'll set this back to, I think it was 8x8, right? That feels like a nice size for us for what we want to do here. We've got these tools here at the top that we can use, and what we're going to do is effectively, these are the tools that we'll use to sculpt an environment. We're going to raise it up. Think of it like clay, except the clay wood you kind of got, I don't know, it's kind of think of it like this magnet, the sculpt tool. You magnetize up, grow the environment. So I don't know, in a Zelda-like type of world, you know, what we probably do is we'll probably raise up the outside, right? If we were going to do that, and let's bring the brush size down some more. You know, and because we're making a little valley kind of thing. You know, and you can think of this as a film set, just about. One of my favorites is noise, and what this will do is we'll add, let's turn it up, turn the brush size up. It's doing that, basically. It's creating a noisy kind of, where we don't need it quite so much, but we'll, so we're kind of making just a kind of a bit of a terrain. I'm going to go to smooth, and we'll just get some of this kind of smooth with a less of a big brush. I'll just smooth a few of these bits out now. Okay. So another one that I like to use is Flatten. Flatten will, you click it on a part of the environment and run it across, and it will raise up everything else to where you were, so it creates like a ledge. So if I bring the brush size down some more, and we'll see now it's kind of raising up the level to where it is when I start dragging. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to undo it. I just want to get this level where he is kind of here. So I'm going to go sculpt, just to bring it up to 0. Okay, to where he is. That's right, about there. And then I'm going to use Flatten just to bring out just to bring the level out, so that we've got a sort of we know where the world kind of, the origin. It's flat at the origin. You know, I like things to be based around the origin, as we know. And so, whoops. So we're just creating kind of a flattish area. Now another good tool for this, another use for this is we could, if we go sculpt and we push down by using shift, okay, we can push this down, you see? So what we might want to do is come down here, and if we push down, again, exactly the same thing that we just did, but we're going down instead of up. And then we take the flatten tool, and then we can start to create a, see, start to create almost a road, right? Except what if this is not a road? What if it's going to be a riverbed? Okay. So we've created kind of a riverbed, and then we'll just, yeah, again, we'll just bring up the smooth, and we'll just smooth things out a little bit. It's fine. So we can see we've kind of made a little riverbed type thing. All right, now let's add some color. If we go click across the paint, we're going to basically use the material from Brushify Natural Roads, which is great for a natural landscape. It's so nice. We just go to Brushify and materials with our landscape selected, and we go to landscape materials, and we can use this material instance. You can use either of them, but use the material instance. Get into the habit of using material instances where you've got them. When you've got the option, and there's a landscape material slot here. We drag that in, and it goes into this sort of shiny blue color. And what we're going to do now is go back to landscape, paint, and then we'll come down here and we can see there's got this button to create layers from assigned materials. This used to happen by default in previous versions. We're using 5.6. You need to click that now, and what it will do is it will filter. It will add the layers from that material that it's expecting. We click on a layer, so let's say grass. And what we need to do is each of these layers should come with a layer info, and we need to just select that first before we do anything. And now we can start to paint. Okay. You see where this is, there's a slope upwards, and we can see as the gradient of the ground climbs, the material smartly changes to be more of a rock, because the grass doesn't grow necessarily on a hill that steep, which is really cool. It's exactly as I remember. I first did this kind of stuff when I was making levels for this game, Battlezone. When I was a kid, I was like 14, 15. And this is exactly how we used to do it. And we used to have these materials that would, they would automatically change based on the inclination of the terrain. And you can see what it comes with is this great natural kind of grass, procedural grass, which is great. All right, now let's paint a bit more, because what we want to do is we don't want grass in the riverbed, right? So there's another way to do that. One way to do it is to remove procedural, all right? And again, we'll select the layer info, and I'm going to bring the brush size down, and I bring the strength up. So the brush size wants to come right down. The fall off wants to come down as well. So we're just painting that bit there. And this brush strength wants to be all the way up. And now what this is going to do, we come in here and we're going to paint here, and you see it's going to remove that procedural grass. Now you see it does quite a lot. It does quite a lot. It takes a minute to redraw. Okay. So we just want to be trying to remove it from here. And another way to do it, of course, is to paint a material on that doesn't have any procedural elements, which we will do as well. So let's pick a different material. What we've got for us, let's try it. We've got mud. Mud might do us. Let's go mud. And you'll see here what we get is this kind of. We just want to paint the bottom of the riverbed with this material. Okay, now from down here, we can see now we've got our riverbed. All right. So we've got a bit of a landscape. We've got some materials. Obviously, the procedural takes a little bit of time to draw, but we can just need to let it load itself. There we go. And you see, obviously, there are other things like procedural rocks and things that have come up in the material. So it does quite a lot of work for you, which I like. I like things doing work for me. I don't want to be doing any of the work. Okay, so let's move on. Let's go to foliage. Now, we all know what foliage is, right? But Unreal has a tool called Foliage that does do foliage, but it can also kind of do other stuff that can help. So let's change our mode to foliage. Now it says drop foliage here. Now what does that mean? We're going to take one of our trees. Okay, we've got a bunch of these trees. Let's take all of them, in fact. These come in the European Beach pack. And we're going to drop them. These are just geometries. We're going to drop them over here where it says drop foliage. Okay, so we dragged our foliage into our foliage meshes into there, and it's converted them into foliage instances that we can use. And you'll see that they're all ticked, which means that if we go to paint, you see this orb here is gonna instance an amount of those objects there. This is a really efficient way to work in terms of getting a lot of geometry into the level so it fills it out. But we're probably going to want to tweak a few things once we start. So let's just click once, see what happens. Do you see what happened? It went fucking bananas. Okay, and that's probably incorrect, right? So let's try and figure out what it did. So we can see what's happening is that we've got a paint density of 0.5, but we can also come down here for each one and it'll allow us to change the density of this asset specifically. And then we can add them to, so we're going to reduce our overall paint density. Let's call it, 0.05 is probably, 0.05 is possibly quite reasonable. So already that feels better. We're not adding absolutely tons of stuff. But we also want to just bring down, we've got a lot of things added here. So we're just gonna use trees for now. So we'll check on the trees and not the shrubs. So, okay. And then for each one of these, let's make it a 10th in this density per unit area, KUU. Okay, and then 10. And you can do this with more than one selected. So we come down here. Okay, and go 10. We can also add a scaling, and it can be so. For example, these are very big. So let's just hit one now and see what happens. Okay, so we didn't get many trees. Then the trees are huge too. So I think these are scaled too big for my liking. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab all 5 of these, and I'm going to apply a scale. So, and we wanted to give it a range so that there are different sizes. And I think they should be between 0.2 and 0.5 of the scale that we've currently got. And I think now we can also bring our overall paint density back up. Okay, so now that feels a little better, right? Now you'll notice that they are they're always angled at the orientation of the world, which trees wouldn't be, right? They'd no matter what angle they grow on, they go upwards. So let's just undo that as well, and we can come in here and we can go align to normal. We turn that off, and now we get them going upwards, which is what we want. Okay, and now I think we can just start to paint a few of them in around the edges, like so. All right. It's possibly worth, you can see what's happened with this one, because it's actually painted on a slope. It might be worth just give it an offset in Z of, let's say, -10. and then we get them in the, I'd say even less actually. Let's go minus 25. Okay. And then if we paint some more here, we should be able to see that they land inside the, yeah, they're inside the ground. Okay. And we can just drag along like that, paint them in. Now let's remember that currently the only thing that we've got on here are the trees, and we can also come in and do the shrubs. Now we'll have to do the same thing with some of the shrubs, and so if we uncheck these so they don't get painted on anymore, and now we'll check some of the shrubs. Let's go to I think these are the shrubs. So we'll check these 4 on, and we'll just do a paint and see what happens. These are still quite tall. I don't think those are the ones that I want. I want the shrubs. So think of these things. Yeah, little shrubby things. Okay, and so we'll do. I always do this. I always just do a sample drop just to see kind of what it gives me. That feels pretty good. It could probably be less. So I'm going to change the paint density. Let's do it in here. Let's change this to 50. We've got all of them selected. Change paint density to 50. And now we can kind of just paint around these trees. And we're just adding some smaller trees inside just to flesh it out, fill it out a bit. And they can come kind of out here like this as well. You can see them there. That's what it's doing. These ones I don't mind them being a little bit more kind of wonky, and they can be aligned to the surface. That's fine. Okay, so now we've painted on some foliage. Now, trees aren't the only foliage you can paint. So, for example, we can grab these rocks and drop them in. We've created a new foliage type now, so we'll unselect these, and we'll grab these. Now, I'm pretty sure these are going to be big, so I don't want to. I want to be careful with what I do because they're quite big. Okay, so what I'm going to do, but I like the density. I just want them to be scaled down. So let's take the scale. So we're going to scale min and max. So I think let's say min 0.1 and max 0.2, and I just want to paint them in on a smaller brush. And I'll paint it, and I want to increase the density. So let's say paint density 0.1. Okay, I think we can even go higher than that. 2. Then we could go higher than that as well. In fact, let's bring it up on here. I'll make it 500 on there, and then now we're getting rocks that we can paint in the bottom of the riverbed, like that. All right, that's pretty cool, right? And we just paint them on, and they stick to the ground, they stick to the terrain. There we go. All right, now, what if we want to add some water? So we can add, we could add a rough plane. We'll do a very simple water. Add a shapes plane. I've usually got a water material. Let's just see what this one is. Okay, that'll do. Okay, so we just dropped a water material in. The water material is from Brushify again, so it's just showing its usefulness there. Okay, so we're nearly done. We've nearly got what we wanted here. The next thing I'm going to show you is splines. Now, splines are shapes that you drop in, and you create a spline. Well, let me just show you. And then you create a set an object to go along it. So we go to landscape, I go to manage, and then to splines. Okay, and we're gonna control click to add our first spline. And what we're gonna say what we're gonna make it is a fence, let's say. There's a fence came in a natural road pack. I'm just gonna bring it up so we can see what we're doing. Okay, and we drag it out like that. So it's an alt and drag, exactly as if we were gonna create a exactly as if we were gonna duplicate an object. So effectively duplicating a spline point, and these things are spline points. Now we can select all splines here, and we can change some of their elements. So we can change their half width. We want to go select all points, and we can change their half width. And then we come down here to spline meshes, okay? So we can open this, and we can add a mesh to the spline. So in this can be, I'm going to use, it could be a road, it could be anything. I'm going to use fence. So we've got these fences that came with the static, in the natural roads. I'm going to drop one in here, and you see what it does there now. So we want to turn off scale to width. Okay, now that gives us a fence object, and we can control its start. We can control its the spline basically that it lives on. So we select the first point, and we're going to move it over here. I'm going to bring out another point, and I'm going to grab this one. And we're going to just make kind of a little fence that runs around the river there. And you kind of see what it's doing. We don't need to have that one come quite so far out now, like that. Okay, this one. And what it does, as you pull it out from as you duplicate it, you see it creates it stretches it, and then eventually it'll stretch it so far that it actually just puts another one in. You see how that becomes 2? So it's just a super nice, useful tool to create kind of natural sort of fence-like, or fence or roads or anything that sits on a curve like that. So that's how you would use a spline. And then finally, of course, what we can use is to finish our landscape, we can just use actual pieces of geometry and just drag them in as normal. Now this is a stone. He call it a stone fence, which to me is a wall. But fair enough to him. And we can also use rock. It's got a rock. Haven't we got a slab in it? I think there's a slab, cliff slab. You know, we might want to do that and put some specific detail in here. Maybe make one of them bigger. Create some stepping stones over the river there. And yeah, so that's our little landscape. And I use the landscape tools to create something like this very quickly and create a natural kind of environment. So just then we covered landscape tools, landscape painting tools, foliage tools, splines, and I think that's it, right? It's very Zelda-like, a very Zelda-like level. So yeah, so that's how to create landscapes and foliage. Let's keep going. We've got more work to do.